belated greetings to YouTube and greetings to Instagram. Momentarily, maybe you're here. Well, Paul, Internet, we are all here. That was just the excited shudder of Paul returning to our studio in beautiful downtown Lawrence, Kansas, where it is a Monday, and we're well aware of that because every day is really important right now in the world. First of all, we're in a global pandemic, but I think you all know that because that is why we are here with you.
It's been big news.
It's been big news. You probably heard about it. But you've probably also been hearing about how we are now embroiled in what is a very long overdue front on the liberation of Black and brown and Indigenous bodies, but primarily we're focusing on the liberation of Black bodies right now and the people who inhabit them and have not been treated fairly for 400 or so years of America.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a Monday, and it's pretty, like, it's not even, I didn't have any trouble remembering it was Monday.
Nope, no trouble at all. So yeah, today's show probably going to be a little different.
We're not going to talk about stationery. We're going to talk about how to move forward.
It's all local news today.
All local news all the time. We're not even going to have like a jokey stationery segment of the show, but we think you should stay with us anyway.
Mm-hmm, please do.
Because we're just a couple of people who feel like we have a platform and some ideas, if you wanted ideas. We think that there's a lot better resources online to learn about a lot of issues related to Black liberation, related to the movement for Black lives. And we could point you to those resources. In fact, I'll fill my stories with some of them later. But most of our audience, like, let's talk about our beautiful audience for a moment. You're beautiful. And we feel like we're a little bit preaching to the choir right now, by and large, which is why we trust that y'all are doing work on your own to find these resources and to share them with your friends who are not in the choir. Particularly friends, like, what's the opposite of the choir, Paul?
Well, sometimes it's the audience. I guess sometimes it's the accountants.
Choirs have accountants?
They might.
That's wild.
They might. The really professional ones.
That's probably true. I don't want to throw accountants under the bus. I exclusively know cool accountants. Isn't that nice? Anyway, whatever they are, you're chatting with them. But we at Wonder Fair want to share, because it feels like the time for people to stand up and say what they're committed to ongoing in the future to secure Black futures, which is why I guess I have one stationery to share. It's this bumper sticker by Nicole Lavelle, an artist whose entire body of work is text-based, and it's about making impactful statements on your car bumper with a sticker that speak to the issues of the day. So this is pretty subtle and sophisticated in that it just says futures, but Black futures are specifically what Nicole is referring to with this black ink on white background bumper sticker. And her tagline for it is just, let's make sure everyone can have one. So I think that's what we're going to talk about today, is what kind of future is Wonder Fair helping to create? And maybe it'll help somebody out there decide how they can fit their role and privilege into doing something to secure better futures as well.
Well said.
How did I do it?
You were doing great. It's a great intro.
It's
a great intro.
Well, I spent my weekend being quiet, listening, and learning before being flapping my own jaw, which we knew was coming Monday.
Now's the time for flapping.
Flap on. So I have a list. First up, local news.
Local news. Big protest yesterday.
Big protest in downtown Lawrence. I actually was quite anxious because that's my default, first of all. So check. But also, in the middle of a pandemic, you don't know how many people will feel safe going out versus how many people don't feel safe going out every day. And like, how do you balance that? But it was several hundred people.
I would wager that estimate is very low.
It seems too low.
That estimate is way low. I don't know if anybody did an official count, but I know a lot about crowd size because I perform in venues. And if you want to ask me how many people were there yesterday, I would guess 5,000.
What?
Yes,
No.
yes, absolutely.
That's wild.
It took up Mass Street from 6th to 11th.
That was a lot of
covered the
people.
whole street during the protest.
Yeah, that's true.
So
my guess was like 1,500 to 2,000.
Absolutely more. Absolutely more.
Newspaper people who I assume walked around and did head count kind of things said 500 to 800.
They're wrong. There's no way it was less than 2,000. I'll tell you that.
It was a lot of people. Many people you could recognize, and that we enjoyed seeing our neighbors in downtown Lawrence, but most of our faces were covered. We're not trusting that person on the internet lying about no 10%. It was definitely 70 to 90% masked up. And you know what? A lot of us knew it was a risk, and there's guilt associated with taking that risk during pandemic. But there's also guilt associated that is perhaps even more valid with the vaccine dream-free just risk of being Black in America. So, there was no wrong choice except complaining about protesting.
Right.
Which is the wrong choice. So we're just going to say it. So that is our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And the protest was very, I feel like there was a lot of opportunity for catharsis, people telling their stories, only people of color, as far as I could see, up to the podium, which was
we were far away.
We were really far away.
Because there were so many people there.
There were so many people, and people watching out for each other and making sure things, if they were out of control, it was in response to the rage people are feeling that's justified towards state-sanctioned violence and state-paid-for violence by the police. But I want to say that the Lawrence police stayed far at the periphery, and that is the appropriate choice during these protests against police. So that was pretty awesome. Good job. But I don't want to say like my opinion of the protest is just my opinion. And
right.
There was no destruction of downtown property that I'm aware of. Many downtown businesses were present at their properties out front, giving things out to protesters, or just being there to provide medical help, like the nurses who own RPG were out just in case.
Just in case. But everything went smoothly.
Yeah.
A peaceful protest in downtown Lawrence. So that's the main report from yesterday, I guess.
That is the report from yesterday. Well, I wrote a list, but it's like there are no transitions. It's not smooth. It's a bumpy ride. So let's just bump along to the next point.
Let's talk about what criminal justice reform looks like in Lawrence. Meredith, let's talk about that.
Let's do it, because I think, wildly enough, while I feel like our audience is probably like not a particularly diverse one racially, there will be some diversity, but there are also people from all over watching, which is wild to us. So a lot of y'all aren't from Lawrence, and it's so nice of you to put us up with us talking about our favorite lunches in Lawrence, since those have really nothing to do with you, and we apologize for that time wasted. This stuff might be relevant because your communities might be different. These might be ways of looking at our individual communities through an adjusted lens. So in Lawrence, which is like the blue dot in the Red Sea of Kansas, aside from Wyandotte County and increasingly other Kansas City metro counties are turning a little purple. But Douglas County, as a university town, has a lot of people who are registered Democrats or otherwise are aligned on the more liberal end of the spectrum. We've also got a lot of dogged independents who, I don't know, the spectrum is more of a sphere, right? I don't know where they fall.
Okay.
They're left. They're in the left. I don't want to decide for them. They decide. You better take this away, Paul. I'm making a mess of that.
Well, in Lawrence, I feel like we're trying to be like a progressive city. That's been our roots and our history. And the shape that can take, I'll just come right out and say it, the shape that can take sometimes is frustrating as progressives, because we see some institutional roadblocks to reforms. And that's mainly been our experience over the last few years when it comes to criminal justice reform, is that it seems like there's a big community-wide desire for it. And at each step of the way where reforms are possible, it seems like for whatever reason, they don't get made. And so we're going to talk specifically about a couple things today, but the big one on our minds is the expansion of the Douglas County Jail. So for those following along at home on the jail, There was a proposal to expand the jail. And people think that the jail needs expanding because the jail's been at capacity or near capacity in terms of jail population over the last couple of years.
People in power who put people in jail, either judges or sheriffs, or the county commissioners who they answer to, feel that way.
That's the important thing.
Community.
That's the important thing to realize here, is that the people with the power are the ones advocating for this jail expansion.
By the way, it would be, I believe, the third jail expansion since the year 2000.
Okay.
It was also expanded around 2006 or 8, I believe. So just a heads up. It's not like it's been it's been 30 years. Our population's gotten huge. While our population has grown, it hasn't grown at a rate that would justify the increased number of arrests and people held in our jail without some other explanation, which, by the way, is frequently tied to a slowing down of court case procedures that keep people in jail longer while they wait to be heard.
Right.
So that's just like paperwork, folks.
There's a lot of reforms that can be made that can decrease the jail population, and there's a local group, Justice Matters, that's been working to forward a lot of those more progressive ideas aimed at decreasing the jail population. But there's been resistance to implement a lot of them from, again, the people in power, like the district attorney's office or the sheriff's office. And so, again, we keep running into these institutional roadblocks to reforms. And what happened with the jail is those people in power forwarded a plan to expand the jail, and Douglas County voters wisely rejected that plan to expand the jail in a ballot measure 3 years ago, probably. It was about 3 years ago in May. Jail No. You might remember the signs. And Jail No was successful despite the fact that it was coupled with a proposal that the community really stood behind, which was to expand mental and behavioral health treatment services in Lawrence.
Because many people who are booked into jail are booked for substance abuse problems or related sort of like aggression based out of that behavior, or mental health services for people who are mentally ill and require like a special kind of handling that is not usually like the domain specifically of law enforcement, though. And I will say that this is a problem with law enforcement. Like, they didn't go into that job to be social service workers to treat mentally ill people, but increasingly that's what they often are called upon to do. So that's just like a problem of like, duties as outlined. Usually if you're doing stuff outside your duties as outlined, you go to your boss and you're like, yo, you didn't hire me for this, but that can't be happening here because of the way it's structured.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a complicated way of saying like,
there are administrative reforms that can very easily decrease police presence.
It's true.
And police responsibility and make our community safer
and I gotta
in the
say,
process.
A lot of those police would happily not be called to answer those situations anymore. If they had an alternative.
There are plenty of examples about how this is done successfully in other cities and in other countries. So we're looking to those as guidance. So the Behavioral and Mental Health Center passed overwhelmingly on its own as a ballot measure. You all know this probably, but that was just 6 months.
Right now.
That was just 6 months after the community voted, no, we won't expand a jail. And they obviously didn't want to expand a jail, but they did want the mental health and behavioral services. So we have a community against the jail expansion, but in favor of these alternatives.
What a backstory.
That's the backstory to where we are now.
Sorry, we can't jazz it up, but here's the problem. This local politics stuff is kind of boring, which is why a lot of folks don't pay attention.
Just check out.
And we can't have you checking out right now.
It's hard it can be hard to track, hard to keep track of, because everything, when you read stuff about it, it's really dense.
Yep.
It's coded in lawyer stuff. And so we're gonna try and streamline the facts for you here.
I'm gonna get a little off topic, I think. But here's where, like, speaking of how this whole jail process, which is many years in the making, is very boring and procedural, and thus doesn't get the attention from the community at every step that it deserves. Part of that is that there's 1 million tiny steps that got us to the place where the jail was being expanded. It happens in the courts. It happens at City Hall. It happens when poverty is allowed to go unchecked in communities, so people are forced into the position of making difficult and then criminal choices. But a great case in point of this is that literally tomorrow, the city commissioners have to vote on the permit that will allow the jail to be built. It's just like a simple step. But what if every time a simple step was being taken, like it should be normally allowed to happen without comment or question if you're taking a normal step in life? But this is a little step that's leading to a bad outcome. So Karens of the world, listen up. We got to stop calling the cops when something simple is going on. But you know what? If you want to like make things difficult for people and like get a lot of paperwork going, maybe every time a little step like getting a zone permit passed for a jail is happening at City Hall, maybe we should just write a lot of letters and make it really hard.
Call them up.
Just call them up. Be like, I don't think you should do that. Use your power like that. Create a lot of paperwork, as my friend Robin shared. Create a lot of paperwork for them. I successfully did that to get the sidewalk project delayed for a while because they had done some stuff wrong about permitting the sidewalk. It ultimately ended up a total clusterfuck for them and it's still not complete. So
you're talking about the canopy removal?
Yes, I am. Yes. That 3-month project is now 1 year over budget, or one year over time budget. I don't even want to know how much it costs because they found asbestos under there, folks, that they dug up. So anyway, I digress. There's lots of little steps. They're all very boring. They slip under the radar. But if you're paying attention, you can sometimes catch someone in those steps and say, like, hold up, maybe we should turn around and reassess where we're heading with this choice.
And the hope is that works, but it's been discouraging because at every step so far, it's people willing to say, well, I'm supposed to do things this way. The county commission voted to expand the jail despite there being, a public vote against expanding the jail. They said, we're constitutionally bound to take care of our prison population. And the only way that we can conceivably do that is by expanding the jail. And I think that's wrong. I think that's a cop-out. That's saying we bow to the institutional power.
Right.
And to the status quo.
Because it's hard to amend the Constitution to say you should actually keep people out of prisons in the first place, which could be done, but would be time consuming and another additional million steps that people don't want to do.
But here's the important thing. The money could very easily be the same or less. It's an opportunity cost to spend $20 million expanding the jail. What does that $20 million do if it's invested in the community in ways that will ultimately decrease the prison population, in ways that keep people from making even small offenses?
Yep. So we're getting
not getting off topic at all. This is all on topic.
It is.
But where it stands now is literally, as Meredith said, tomorrow our city commission votes to approve a permit to begin construction on the jail expansion. So there's 5 people on the city commission. If 3 people say, we're not going to approve this right now, we're going to wait.
Yeah, which they could probably have grounds to do, saying, actually, this was based on sales tax collection, which are down because COVID. Like, our business is 80% down. We don't know if it will ultimately pan out that the money that should be in this project will be there. Maybe because internet sales provide use tax, that won't be the case. But what if it is? What if
Here's
it's
the thing, though. It's just simply these are 5 people who've been put in power by the people to make decisions in the public interest. And they have the power right now to say, let's put a pause on this.
Yep, they can just pause it. So if you'd like to write a letter and just say, hey, I think you should vote no on that.
Don't write a letter. It's tomorrow. Call City Hall right now.
Right. Well, here's why I suggest writing an email.
Okay.
Sorry, I meant an email. You can write an email. You can find all their emails. You can copy it to all of them. If you send an email by 5, it will be published and included in the record at the meeting, so they can't ignore it and they have to acknowledge the public comment aloud, which makes it more meaningful because it enters the record, and that's just important. You got to leave a paper trail.
So by 5 o'clock today.
I think it's by 5 o'clock today. Write an email. You can either write it to the city manager or to all 5 of the city commissioners or all of those people. All of their information can be found on the City of Lawrence website, which I gotta say, City of Lawrence makes attending and watching city commission meetings, even during a pandemic, very easy. It's all online.
Mm-hmm.
So we think it's really important. There's a lot of international or national attention on places where the unrest is like the most visually exciting, and all the shit going on, all the stuff going on in Lawrence is just boring paperwork stuff right now. But if you're interested in helping out locally, we think that's one way, but also it is an election year, and oftentimes the elected officials who serve us in Lawrence are mostly aligned with us, and you're going to be choosing between like 2 Democrats. But in this case, we think that there's an election coming up, a primary that people are going to totally ignore because it is going to be happening during pandemic zany time at the beginning of August, when students may or may not be coming back, which is going to be a problem because they're a big part of our voting population and they might not be here. I don't know how often they vote in these kind of city elections anyway. But August 4th, there will be a primary for our district attorney. Paul, what's a district attorney do?
They're the people who prosecute crimes.
Yeah.
In a city.
And you know what else? They decide like what crimes they even want to prosecute.
They make a lot of decisions that can have an effect on who spends time in prison, who goes to trial.
Do they also like set the amounts that you'll collect for bail and stuff?
They do all that stuff.
They do a lot of really important stuff, huh?
Yep.
That seems like a big job you'd want someone who was dedicated to having an anti-racist agenda to be doing. Indeed. Not just a Democrat, but maybe like an anti-racist Democrat. That
is a great point, Meredith.
Good news, everybody. For the first time in like 10 years, somebody is contesting the current DA, who I gotta say, is not a bad person. Mm-hmm. They're a fine person. They are doing their job by the book. But guess what? We all know the book sucks. We need a better book.
We need a better approach.
We need a better approach. So we're here to tell you that we think you should vote in the primary for Cooper Overstreet.
Cooper Overstreet. I talked to him on Saturday morning while his child was screaming in the car. I mean, maybe not screaming, but okay. He was very nice. He was very nice.
Our cat.
Sorry. Cooper Overstreet. Let's talk about him. He's a progressive candidate for district attorney here in Lawrence. He works for
the Swain Law Office. And if that name's familiar to you, it's because they're the best law office in town. No offense to other law offices, just is it Sarah Swain?
Sarah Swain.
Sarah Swain actually ran for
Attorney General of Kansas.
General. Did not win, which I'm sad about because Sarah Swain is a dedicated anti-racist who's devoted her career and her law practice to criminal justice reform at the lowest and highest levels. So they're really trying to like fix the big picture. They're doing a ton of work. Her approach is definitely more of the like, I'm just going to say curse words about the system, which some of y'all might find refreshing. And I think that says something helpful about Cooper Overstreet as well, that his background is in defense.
Mm-hmm.
So he's been
which you don't normally. That's the thing. Usually he's running to be the prosecutor now. Mm-hmm. He's moving from defense to prosecution, but he's coming at it with the idea that there's a whole bunch of stuff we don't need to be prosecuting. And that will keep people out of jail. Which would mean we don't need a bigger jail. Don't need a bigger jail.
Which would mean we'd save tons of money.
I want to talk about some of the things Cooper, and I might call him Coop because his website's all like, vote Coop.
Is this like we got like a boog in Congress.
We got a boog, we got Coop.
Maybe we'll get a Coop.
We need somebody else with 2 O's, the trifecta.
I would love to have somebody. What else? What other office? Oh, we need somebody else to run for county commission.
There you go.
You've got until today. If you've got 2 O's in your name.
File today. We need
anti-racist.
We need an anti-racist on county commission. There's a seat, 1 or 2 seats up. I think there's 2 seats up on county commission. And honestly, we haven't found anybody we're excited about there, and that is a problem too. That is a problem. Coop. Let's talk about Coop. Candidate for district attorney here in Lawrence. Coop says, and I want you to go to votecoop.com if you want to check out his platform. I'm going to keep repeating that because I can't read all these things, but this is like a list of great ideas, and there's no way that he can do all of these. I want to be clear.
Yeah.
But this is the platform. And if he can do even some of them, that's a big deal.
A lot of people can't even admit that they want to do these things because they are afraid of what people will say, and that is not the attitude to have right now. So, Coop, what are your big ideas?
Coop says he's not going to prosecute. Where was it? Outstanding fines and fees.
Yeah.
Why would you prosecute poor people?
Yeah,
for not being able to pay fines and fees.
That doesn't make sense, because then you're just going to be in jail and increasingly more poor. And you know what? We're getting rid of downtown parking tickets for a while, so they're not even going to be people who need that.
Coop
it also
says,
backs up the system so that people who actually need to have their cases seen and heard can get through the system faster.
And it's not a crime to be poor, and we're making it one by keeping people in jail because of it. So Coop wants to get rid of cash bail too. I should have led with that, because that's the most obvious one. Why is that still a thing?
Cash bail's a mess.
Bye.
Bye, cash bail.
Say bye. Okay, what else? Shorter prison sentences. Going to refuse to prosecute. I'm going to do the headers here rather than I might dig in when I want to clarify something.
Okay,
if I don't understand
people are all going to want to go and read Coop Overstreet's incredible platform, and then you're going to want to vote for sure in the primary.
This is our endorsement of Coop. It's not a paid advertisement.
No, it's not. It does feel like it. But.
We got to get some Coop swag to sell. Okay. Shorter prison sentences. Won't prosecute crimes of poverty. I guess I already mentioned that one. But driving while suspended, get out of here. That's not a crime. I mean, I guess it's technically against the law, but you shouldn't be in jail for it because you didn't hurt anybody. Yeah. Unless you were doing it drunk. I mean, that's different.
That's a different offense.
That's a different offense.
That's a felony, actually. So it's a whole other thing.
Expand diversion programs and alternatives to incarceration. This is a big one that comes up in ways to decrease the people being held in jail. Of course, it's going to be on a progressive district attorney's platform. But the idea is that there's, by keeping people in prison longer, you affect their ability to make stable income. You affect their ability to be a part of their family and community. And so the faster you can get them back out, the better chance they have at actually rehabilitation.
I like this fact that Douglas County has one of the lowest rates of felony diversions in the state. I don't know the details behind that, but if there's no justification for that, then the only justification is to get rid of that bad stat for our county. Mm-hmm. So Lawrence has invested more in diversion programs, which was part of a requirement before the jail was approved. However, they did not provide information about how much more was being spent on that or how it was impacting the jail population. So we feel there's not enough effort being shown or made to actually divert people from what we know to be racist and life derailing, go to jail. Mess up your life.
Mm-hmm. Disruptive.
Sorry, can't always be coherent on it. We're not paid actually to ask people to vote. We are actually paid to sell stationery.
But we could. We're really trying to hustle right now. Our income's been really low. So if you want to pay us to get people to vote,
actually pay someone who needs it. So don't listen to Paul.
Okay.
Back on track.
I'm just saying we're going to be real flexible.
Paul.
Coop, we're talking right now. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about Cooper Overstreet, progressive candidate for district attorney here in Lawrence.
We want you to get out the vote for him.
We absolutely do.
In August, we want you to tell your friends who don't normally vote in small local elections. Primaries are like nothing election in Lawrence.
This is the time for big ideas and big change.
Turn out.
Cooper Overstreet is a world of difference between the other two candidates in terms of the ideas that he's bringing to the table here. So I'm going to keep talking about Cooper Overstreet's platform a little bit. These are the kind of reforms that we need here in Lawrence to fight for those communities who continue to experience disparities in the way that they are treated by both law enforcement and the judicial system.
Which in Lawrence is importantly definitely Black and brown people, but also Indigenous people, which Lawrence has an above the national rate of because of our incredible school, Haskell. So that is also something to keep our eye on.
Okay.
Right? Okay.
Back to Coop's platform. Coop. I love calling him Coop. I
That's-
didn't ask if I could call him Coop, but I'm guessing it's okay since it's like votecoop.com.
He's got a real cute logo.
It's I'm into it. Everybody's gonna get Coop fever or like I don't know what's the.
I don't think we're supposed to be getting
maybe
more
we shouldn't
fevers
be
right
doing
now.
that. Okay.
Mm-mm.
All right. Well,
Wrong messaging.
speaking of public health, Cooper Overstreet is going to treat mental health and drug issues as public health problems, not as criminal conduct. So that's a big idea, and it's a big change. And we're only now starting to have the infrastructure in order to do that with the construction of the Mental and Behavioral Health Center here in Lawrence. So it's great to have somebody who's going to make that a priority in terms of how they prosecute and treat people in the criminal justice system. So won't prosecute sale or possession of a gram or less of narcotics, right? I don't. It's metric. We should be on the metric system, folks. It's another episode, okay? Utilize research-based approaches to keep individuals with mental health disorders out of the criminal justice system. Now, this I think that seems overwhelming, but this is really I think the district attorney tends to get familiar with the people who become those sort of repeat mental health offenders.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably not as hard as it seems to implement. All right. When it comes to transparency and accountability at the district attorney's office, it's gonna, this was huge. I want to read this because I can't summarize it because it's a little technical. Okay. Any property or money his office obtains from the legal process or grants will go directly to investment in housing, job, and education services that evidence shows actually reduce crime. So when property is seized, that tends to get used to basically fund either the law enforcement or the criminal justice system. And Coop is saying that's not what we're going to use that money for. We're going to use that money from seized property to make our community better.
Yeah, talk about looting. All right.
Amazing.
They take your house and give it to the criminal
That's one of those technical
system.
things that just is so easy to overlook. But I mean, I am so excited that he's bringing that to the table here. Ending civil asset forfeiture. So prosecutors are incentivized to seize property because that money goes into their budgets. So again, of the same piece with the previous. All right. He's going to create an anti-racism task force to investigate racial disparities in our criminal justice system.
Generally, when I hear task force, I'm like, cool, kick the can down the road. We'll wait and see on this one. Justice Matters does task force that do research and then within a year take action on them. And they are a big part of the reason we delayed the jail expansion for so long. So task force can work, but I do want to say they don't always get you excited changing where civil forfeitures go.
This is basically Cooper saying, I'm agreeing to community oversight of my job on this subject.
It's also saying it's not enough to just not be racist, which, by the way, we all are inherent.
Mm-hmm.
It's inherent in society because we live in it. But to just acknowledge that anti-racism is work that's a verb that we all have to do actively all the time. So that's nice.
All right.
Hey,
I'm going almost point by point because I love all this. Should I keep going?
I don't know, because I'm ready to take us to a related step.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like people should be excited enough by now to be like, I not only will vote in August, but I will get in touch with their campaign to put a sign in my yard, and I will talk to my neighbors and be like, hey, you know what? I think we get to vote by mail in August. Isn't that exciting? I don't actually know if that's true.
I'll tell you what, if you're excited about Cooper Overstreet's candidacy, we will have some signs here that we can distribute. So you can come we don't have them yet, but you can always check in and say, hey, did you get those signs? So we'll have yard signs here that we'll be distributing. And yeah, I'll just do one or two more create a no-call list of bad cops. So folks who are not allowed to testify, he won't accept their testimony in any criminal cases.
Awesome. So if someone's been proven to provide testimony that feels, for example, racist, or if they have a bad record, You just don't get to show up and throw someone under the bus with your testimony. That's awesome.
This is great. I mean,
society does that all the time. People get canceled every day.
That is actual.
We could get canceled tomorrow.
That is.
And that'd be fine.
Actual accountability for some police. Which can we have more, please?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm cutting them off. So, here's the step I want to take this to. I feel like there can be a reaction that's a little bit anxious when you talk about restructuring society, like just changing your DA. People are going to be mad about our suggestion to do that from two sides, and I understand both of them. One is going to be, the master's tools will never destroy the master's house, and we can't keep having, we just need to rebuild the whole thing, burn it down. I get that. Other people will think, that's enormous and too much work, and I don't actually get that perspective. But if you're out there, I'm ready to coach you through it. So I completely agree that there needs to be a dismantling and total rebuild. But I want to talk about briefly, if we're on the step to dismantling, that happens brick by brick. Usually if your attempt to dismantle is to just plow through the wall, that gets it done really fast. But then a lot of the bricks got broken on the way, and it's a big old mess. So we need a little bit of that, but also preserve, if we dismantle, this August is 2 months away, and putting someone in the DA's office who is able to change the laws that county commissioners say are the reason they made bad choices, that's actually going to dismantle a lot of the rows with a pretty decisive community action of just educating yourself on the candidates and voting for the one who's the most anti-racist, so that they're in the position of power while it lasts to help facilitate the dismantling. He'd be like a foreman who's we're taking it down, instead of someone who's whoa, I'm chaining myself to this wall. You can't knock it down because my house isn't there and I'm afraid for it. So I think the analogy got weird, but I hope people followed along that dismantling is a process that can be intimidating because there will be losses for those of us who have a lot of privilege right now. But ultimately, if your choice is between continuing to have the privilege you have and all the pain and suffering that's around it, or having a little bit of it now so that everybody can be liberated and more free in the future, I think you're going to enjoy the future more when people aren't constantly so sorrowful about the horrible pressure of society on them at every level. So I just want to talk about a resource I saw. This is out of Minneapolis. It's the MPD 150. They are an organization that's a community-based initiative challenging the narrative that police exist to protect and serve. And there's a lot of historical precedent for that because originally it was about protecting property, not necessarily protecting people.
Originally?
Yes. So they say in this comment, we understand that this is a new idea for many people to rebuild our justice system in a new way. What follows are some frequently asked questions and our responses. Won't abolishing the police create chaos and crime? How will we stay safe? Police abolition work is not about snapping our fingers and instantly defunding every department in the world. Rather, we're talking about a gradual process of strategically reallocating resources, funding, and responsibility away from police and toward community-based models of safety, support, and prevention. So this is exactly what Cooper Overstreet is talking about. There are many people who I feel like centrists will consider extremely radical, but their ideas are just let's give some of these funds instead of to body armor to housing to try to alleviate poverty, or to education programs to try to better educate our population so we don't need body armor. And it is radical, but it's also kind of logical. And we've been trying this one thing and it's not going great. So another logical choice is to just have a little faith and hope in your community and humanity that we might be able to reallocate these resources in a way that does create
it's investing in people and not punishment.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. So I think there's a knee-jerk reaction to be we can't dismantle it, we need it, and we need some of it. But we can also take the bricks that were helpful in that structure, we can keep them and we can slot them in differently to a better structure.
It's about
I don't know how that went.
No, it's great. I think that's helpful to me because it is impossible or not impossible, but frequently near impossible to envision something that you don't have any notion of. We're brought up in a culture where cops are just always there. They've always been a part of how we envision the justice system.
Right. They're not all going to lose their jobs. They're going to learn how to do their jobs differently in a structure where a lot of their work of getting called to respond to mental health crises is actually going to go to someone trained in mental health crises. And that sounds smart.
Right.
So transitioning from that.
So when the cops are like 90% of our calls are nonviolent, 90% of those calls should be answered by somebody else.
And I don't think they'd actually mind that. And they'd be like, whew, that's a relief.
And then they don't have to employ as many people.
Some of them might get cool jobs in like the forests and parks industry, putting out forest fires. I don't know. So transitioning, by the way, you know what the overarching theme of this, slapping our jaws, because it's time for people to offer alternatives if you have any privilege at all. We're like not very good at this. And there are, so like if you're afraid to speak out because you think you're not going to do it well, just look at our bad, I'm not going to say bad example. Look at us trying.
Just start your own home shopping show, let it go for a couple months, and then make a political statement.
The soapbox is basically a soap stage now, but that's because it's what's needed. And anyway, just see us trying and accept our apologies that we're not perfect at it, but we are.
Nobody's
trying to
perfect,
learn
and that's important to remember. Is we're all learning together and trying to be better together.
So
and that's what a community is.
Things that aren't going to be perfect right away. I brought up that the dismantling process, while scary to some, has a lot of logic behind it. There's going to be some very good foremen helping run the show, or ideally there will be. Like, you want to put those people in place. But what are some other models for community policing that we as downtown business owners feel like we can speak to with some authority? So here's where we have a lot of experience to talk about what we think could be done better in downtown Lawrence. And one example.
And you know that if you tune in, you know we can soapbox on downtown.
Well, we love downtown. I mean, I choose to live in Lawrence forever, partly because of this downtown. In fact, I think it's like 80 to 90% of why I live in Lawrence is because of downtown Lawrence and the great businesses here that are by and large run by people who really care. Although, like elsewhere in America, our business ownership's not particularly diverse racially. That's a comment. That's a section for another day, I think. But a lot of the reason people are called to downtown Lawrence is behavioral health problems. People, especially like, quote, loitering outside. These are people who are houseless. Some of them have mental and behavioral health issues that business owners don't feel equipped to deal with, which I understand. They probably either didn't go to business school like us, or in general, like that's not their line of business. And so the knee-jerk reaction is often to call the police on those people. But a suggestion that Downtown Lawrence Incorporated, which I'm on the board of, has been trying to make to the city for years is that instead of having to use our police force, who are already very busy, from coming downtown and having to just keep rearresting those same people, we could have force isn't quite the right word, but we could have hired people with experience in dealing with mental and behavioral health problems, or who are at least like extremely sensitive to and interested in working with homeless and houseless populations. Those people could be employed to be downtown and provide resources for the people who need it and be a first place to call instead of the police for business owners who are still grappling with how to deal with what is essentially just public poverty, which is not a crime. So we've called it the Downtown Diplomats Program. It's not perfect in every way. It's not specifically aimed at creating a more just criminal justice system, but it would actually be a step on the path. And for 2 years, the city has not funded this very low cap. It's only $50,000 a year that we proposed, and that's just to pay the salaries of the people who do this work. So it's just straight job creation, by the way. And they haven't funded it for 2 years, but we might have a chance now that there's no parking enforcement. Maybe those folks are going to get to be like a smaller version of what we hoped for this alternative community, basically a safety and security and like assistance force downtown that's not militarized. So if that sounds like a good idea to you, like what if communities had different models for security that were more based in targeting the problematic behaviors that exist, like poverty. It's not a behavior, it's a problem we have to target elsewhere. If that sounds like a good idea to you, maybe like write the city commission and say, hey, I heard about that downtown diplomats thing. That sounds good. You should fund that. You could take that money like right out of some other department, and you could like hire some people to do that.
Right. So we're talking about simple, easy ways to replace some contacts with police.
It's not wildly simple. There are many models for communities doing this. I will say I'm not always impressed, and I think sometimes it's just like a more, just like getting bouncers for downtown is not our goal. Right. It would be something much more Lawrence than that. I'm not saying they're going to be like walking up and down the street with incense sticks, making it smell nice, like not Choppa, although that would be so Lawrence. I'm saying they're gonna have some background in and experience with, and they will get to know the people downtown. Although I will say the law enforcement also does know the people who are commonly called on. Anyway, soapbox so big and roomy. I'm just rolling around in it. Downtown Lawrence, Downtown Diplomats is a program that is not going to be perfect when it starts, but it is following the model. It's a step in the dismantling process where you take one brick out and you try to put a new one over there on the new foundation we're building. So if that sounds good to you, please support us, because it hasn't been going anywhere, and we have an opportunity now where maybe that could be funded. Also, if people have ideas for how to do that well, Lawrence Incorporated honestly needs the help of people from outside our business community, which can be very myopic and narrow. And frankly, we're not good at creating a lot of like other organization input into ours, because everybody's so busy trying to keep their business from going under right now. So we could use some help. I'm just going to say it.
It's a good time for new ideas. So if you've got them, let us know. Feel free. We really are ready to hear your thoughts on any of these things, and to point us to things we haven't thought about.
So ways we're trying to help every day in an ongoing way are, we want to direct people's attention to these local elections that are so important and so boring. We want to direct people's attention to alternatives that we're putting forward in the community that we could be a city that shows an alternate model.
Right.
For safety and security.
One where police aren't the first line.
We're like,
why not Lawrence is the question. It should be Lawrence.
Yeah,
Lawrence should be the leader.
Boulder, Colorado, Lawrence, Kansas. But I don't even know. Boulder's very busy with their own thing. So maybe us.
It should be Lawrence. We pride ourselves on being real progressive and thought leaders
really
here. And we got to be better at it. We can be better. It's not that hard.
Structural level.
Right. So we can do it.
We can do it. I think we can do it. So if you're at home a lot right now and you have time to do some research and do the things and write the letters, this is a great time to put your energy in at the local level where it's not a ton of focus on Lawrence right now. So your voice could be really, really impactful. While everyone's busy putting out so many fires everywhere, literally. We want to light the fire in you.
Light it up.
That was nerdy.
Yeah.
I apologize. Okay. I just want to make sure I covered some good points about how not to be afraid of dismantling, because it's not like the wall's going to topple on you right away. Unless you yoink a brick like right out from the bottom, which is someone, start at the top is what I'm saying, where that wall's going to fall on you. So like, don't pick on the little guys. Anyway, that's like a Jenga game. Maybe I should be using Jenga as my analogy.
Good Jenga analogy, yeah.
Okay, so I think I covered that enough. I'll put some of these resources in our stories later, but I'm just going to be resharing information shared by organizations led by Black and Brown and Indigenous people of color, because that's who we should be listening to. I just know that our audience, I feel like our allies who are anti-racist, and we know y'all, want to know what the heck we're doing with ourselves, or maybe you would lose faith in us, which would be appropriate. So we hope your faith is not misplaced, and we're here to keep doing the work and ideally doing it better. That was almost a closer.
It's
I bet
almost
we
a closer.
Have more
I'm
to
gonna suggest folks do.
Ooh, it's almost time.
If you want to get more involved in this kind of stuff, there's a couple places locally. One we would suggest is Justice Matters, which is a faith-based coalition. Our faith is not in a higher being, but in humanity. So we'll put our faith there, and we're joining up with these folks because they're doing the work on the ground. They're the ones out there proposing a lot of these alternatives to incarceration, alternatives to policing.
They're doing the work. And faith-based organizations for decades have been at the forefront of particularly matters related to racial inequality. I won't say the church is doing a great job on most other issues or that they're perfect at that one, but since we've established that everybody's a trash person, not doing the best job possible, because we all live in a society that makes that hard, okay, let's hang out.
We'll do what we can.
So
Justice Matters is a great way to catch up on what's been going on with the jail expansion in particular, if you want to brush up on that and look for action items related to that. They have a lawsuit pending. They're suing Douglas County, suggesting that it was illegal for the commission to vote to expand the jail without a public hearing, or rather a public vote on it.
Is that still happening?
It is in process.
They're spending a ton of money to do it.
They're spending a ton of money to do it.
The city made county made it very expensive for them to do this public protest. So
we can contribute to Justice Matters. We're members. We go to their meetings. I'm sorry, I don't remember offhand. Their big meeting usually happens in the late spring, and I don't exactly know the status of that, but usually this is a pretty active time for them to sort of talk about what their big projects are for the year. And I'd imagine the jail remains at the forefront.
I think we should say one quick thing. So we had been told when initially the vote was happening and we were vocal in our support of the Jail No movement, we were told, like, you will lose business by supporting this stance and being public about it, but we did it anyway. And we get that. For some people, the need for expanding the jail was a moral imperative because the jail was overcrowded. And particularly people were concerned, rightly, that women in the jail were even more overcrowded and put in an unsafe position. I think that it's hard for me to hear that comment without people having also explored why more women are in jail now than have ever been before. And that would be a cause or problem I would like to root out first. But additionally, I reject the argument that overcrowding is a moral imperative that gets fixed. It is taking 3 to 4 years to expand the jail with the plan that was proposed, which is very expensive, and plans for years of growth in the jail instead of contraction of the jail population. There was an opportunity early on to place pods that I agreed were not ideal, but pods that would have immediately solved the overcrowding problem by putting what are basically like a trailer on the property that would provide low security space for populations who needed protecting, like women. And they rejected that option, using a little bit of fancy language to say it wasn't enough and that it would be a waste of money since they ultimately needed a bigger jail anyway. They could have immediately solved the moral imperative by doing the pod system and chose not to because it would have made it harder to get the jail built. And these are just the facts.
It's always a game of like, what can we do to achieve our agenda of expanding this jail?
So I do reject that argument, though I understand it. And I know there are counter arguments that like it would be wasted money if in fact we needed the bigger jail eventually. You got to get it started. But we propose that you do not need the bigger jail. You need to reinvest and rebuild the criminal justice system that keeps people in jail and that drives people toward a life where crimes of poverty end up with them in jail. This is a race problem. This is a white supremacy problem. And Wonder Fair is willing to sell less stationery to people if it helps, which
Absolutely.
It might not. So kind of feel like you're banging your head against the wall, but since we've established that the wall's just like only an okay wall that we don't even really like.
It's not even a great wall.
It's not like a ugh. It's like I mean, people should graffiti that wall. Then it'd at least be interesting to look at. So Paul, we've been on a journey. It was nice of people to hang out with us today.
We appreciate it.
We're a stationery store in downtown Lawrence, Kansas, and we also sell art made by human being people who I believe in probably every case share a lot of our feelings, so we owe it to them and to our customers and to everyone
and to our community
to participate in every level that we see fit. If we have the privilege of being a business here and we want to stay that way, we can't only be a business here. So did we do
that's gonna be a wrap for today. Are we doing more shows this week, or what are we doing?
We're torn on it because we do feel like this is a time to listen to other voices. There's also something very impactful to me about us being here every day. Very like we've talked about, where like the band keep on playing while the Titanic sinks. So we're a little unsure. Here are a couple reasons we may not have episodes this week. We are probably tapped out of our resources for you at this time, and we don't want to just fake it. So that's the thing. And we want people to have time to look elsewhere. Maybe we will be able to find some other resources to just share at noon. Also, it is coming to the time when we're going to reopen to some form of foot traffic in the store, probably appointment-based. So we need to do a lot of work in the store to get it physically ready for that.
You've seen the boxes.
You've seen the boxes. You know it's a mess.
You know it's a mess.
And we got to build out our whole Pennsylvania pencil land.
Coming attractions.
Coming attraction is going to be an exciting place to visit when you can get out, and we'd appreciate your support when you can do that, because it's been a rough 3 months.
We miss you all. We miss seeing people in the stuff.
We miss people.
Having these conversations face to face.
That's true. We do.
It's exciting. So we have got a lot of stuff to do.
We have a lot to do, and the world's there's a lot happening that people should be paying attention to. Maybe it's not us. So, where do you put your ego in this versus your privilege to do something useful? Like, how do you balance those? So we're struggling, and we don't honestly know what is correct, and we don't want to ask people who already have a lot on their plates, so we just have to work it out for ourselves and hope we make a good choice. Pointed toward a brighter horizon. That's what I said at the beginning of the pandemic shutdown, that I hoped we were all pointed toward a brighter horizon. I didn't necessarily predict all of the islands we'd be passing on the way, but could be a shiny horizon if we can get a lot of these wounds in America healed up in a way that is permanent, not temporary. So maybe we won't be here this week. Maybe we'll be here for short, little, just hey, checking in. How's it going? Do a little check-in? Maybe we'll do a little check-in. Here's what we also think people sometimes need: just cats. So we might just have an hour-long video where we set the camera up in front of Dave taking a nap, because that's what we all want to do, but we can't take naps right now. So if you need to have Dave take a nap on your computer while you're doing the work, we can do that for you.
That's a good idea.
That is a good idea like that. And then I'll have them saved on IGTV for me forever, and I need them.
Okay.
Thank God for Dave.
Thanks for tuning in to One of Your Home Shopping Network today. Thanks to everybody who came out last night downtown for our peaceful protest here. Thank you for the actions you take to make our community better each day. Get on the city commission to reject the jail expansion. That happens tomorrow night. Please run for county commissioner.
Oh my God.
Okay, signing off. We'll see you maybe tomorrow.
What's tomorrow?
Tuesday,
says Paul. But who even knows? Maybe we'll get a new calendar in the middle of all this too. Stay tuned.